Hello, everyone, and welcome to our federal fiscal year 2025 PEARS quarterly reporting and data quality processes training. My name is Summer Cortez, and I'm joined by Carolyn Ryder, and we'll be your facilitators for today. We have two core objectives for this training. The first of which that you will be able to maintain up-to-date PEARS reporting by quarter. And the second, that you will be able to resolve data quality QA/QC issues quarterly. So to start us off, Carolyn will facilitate a poll.
Just while you are answering this, I wanted to say that one of the reasons we're asking this is because we messed up on the registration question about this. We know that you were only able to answer one module when many of you work in multiple, and we just wanted to understand how each of you works in pairs because every LHD is a little bit different. And it looks like folks are just about finishing up. So I think we can probably go ahead and close this out and share results. Okay, so as you can see, it looks like there's a lot of variety. People work on a lot of different modules. There's a lot of program activities being reported here. We're going to do our best in today's training to address all of these different needs. I do want to note for those here, about half of you who are saying that you work in the success stories module, that this requirement is going to continue to be one PSC related success story submitted annually. And success stories are not checked for data quality. So we're not going to be talking anymore about them in today's webinar. There's no changes to how you report success stories happening this year. That module will continue to be supported by your project officer. So if you have any questions about how you're reporting success stories, please reach out to that project officer. Okay, so let's talk about the big why. Why is this important? Why are we even here today talking about PEARS reporting? And why are we going to start doing it quarterly? So PEARS reporting is an important component of our overall evaluation of CalFresh Healthy Living because if you don't measure it, you can't improve it. The data you enter, each of you enter into PEARS describes our program. It forms a picture of what we implement, when we implement it, and with whom. It can be combined with other data sources like budgets, behavioral and health outcomes to answer questions about program effectiveness. This informs critical program questions, like what you see here. How do the dollars we get from USDA translate into programs? Are our programs reaching the folks that we intend them to? Are the programs effective? What program improvements can we make? So when some of your activities are reported incorrectly, incompletely, or even not at all, that means that the picture we can form of our program is a poor representation. It might be fuzzy or distorted. And then when we use that picture to inform those critical program questions, that can really impact our decision making and make it harder to improve our program. So I've been using we and our as I talk about this quite a bit. But who do I mean by that? I mean all of us, everybody that's on this call today, local and state practitioners and evaluators, but I also mean USDA, I mean others at a national level. Annually, your PEARS data are aggregated and compiled with data from other sources and submitted to USDA in an annual report. USDA then uses the data to evaluate and improve SNAP-Ed nationally. At a state level, your PEARS data are aggregated with other LAA data by CDSS in an annual impact report, and with other LHD data by us in data briefs. These products describe the nature, the reach, and the effectiveness of CalFresh Healthy Living and support the ongoing need for the program. NPI also uses PEARS data to calculate intervention dose scores, when we combine this with outcome data, it can be a very powerful measure of the impact of local health department CalFresh Healthy Living on population health. At a local level, each of you may use PEARS data in different ways, but we hope that each LHD has found the data useful in evaluating and improving your programs. Currently, CDPH's research team is building new dashboards to make this even easier for you and for CDPH to monitor your programs at local and state levels so that you can improve and adapt your programs quickly. And quarterly reporting is actually going on, it's going to help make that possible. So let's look at how that's going to happen. So the way that we're able to use data depends on two things: how timely the data is and the data quality. So when we use data for evaluating program effectiveness, we generally talk about doing this on an annual timeline. That means that a year-end deadline for data entry and data quality works pretty good. Rather than timeliness, the priority for the data is a high level of data quality. This is why, as we'll talk about in more detail shortly, we have pretty extensive year-end data quality processes. On the other hand, when we want to use data to monitor and improve program implementation, it becomes more important to have data in real time, or as close to it as is reasonable, so that we can tweak our programs while they're still happening. For this purpose, we want reasonably good data quality, but we can generally accept some small errors. New in FFY25 is this dashboard that I mentioned that will pull in your PEARS data quarterly with a small delay for data quality processes, but still timely enough to help identify opportunities or needs for mid-year program tweaks. This new dashboard will support state and local efforts to monitor and improve implementation. For example, we can monitor to ensure we are on track to achieve programmatic priorities, such as implementing PSC work at multiple levels and in priority PSC settings. Okay, so that's a lot. Let's just talk very quickly, high level, about what that's going to look like. And then we're going to get down into more detail. As big picture deadlines on the right-hand side here, so looking across at rows, these are your quarters: first quarter, second quarter, etc. And on the right-hand side, this is talking about your deadline each quarter for your reporting. So the last month of each quarter is when you will need to be sure that your reporting is done. The first 2 months are focused on quality assurance processes for the prior quarter. Very big picture, that's it. End of the quarter, finish up your reporting. Towards the beginning of the quarter, you're looking back and finishing up your QA/QC for the prior quarter. I know that that's a very quick look. We're really looking big picture right now. Again, we're going to get into the nitty-gritty in just a moment. I haven't looked at the chat, but hopefully if you've had questions up until this point, you're putting them in there. And Summer and other team members are taking a look there. And I will, when I have a moment, when I'm not rambling on at you guys, I will also be looking in the chat and seeing if I can answer some questions as well. I do want to mention that this slide, as well as some others that are coming, will appear in a supplemental PDF called LHD PEARS Activities by Quarter that is available on our website and was sent out in an email to you this morning. Okay, so let's talk about what quarterly reporting is actually going to look like. So at the end of each quarter, PEARS should have an entry for all PSE, direct education, indirect education, partnership, and coalition activity that has been started or finished during the fiscal year to date. What does that mean? That means create a PEARS entry when that activity begins. If an activity has been ongoing from the prior year, this is a good time to be thinking about that. Let's say that you have a PSE activity that's ongoing from year to year. You've been working in the site for 2 or 3 or 4 years. You should be creating the PSE entry right about now, which you can copy from the prior year. You should be doing that this quarter. Throughout the year, you should be updating pairs entries when it's relevant. If something is changing with an activity, let's say that you have new activity happening related to whichever one this is, PSC, DE, whatever, you should be updating that entry on an ongoing basis. Ensure that it is updated by the end of the quarter. You don't have to go in every day because there's new information, but by the end of the quarter. This is some of the kinds of things that should be updated. If an activity is year-long, which tends to be things like PSC, partnership and coalition activities, then you're going to finalize that in the fourth quarter. And make sure everything has been marked complete by the end of the year, or if it is complete some point during the year, then mark it complete by the end of the quarter when it is actually complete. Okay, we talked about create that entry when the activity begins. What does that mean? If it's a PSC activity, it begins when you've contacted the site and they've agreed to participate. That doesn't mean if you've contacted them and they haven't responded to your email or your phone call, and it doesn't mean when you actually have changes adopted. It's in between those. For DE and IE, it should be fairly straightforward. It begins when you've actually reached participants. For partnerships, it's when the activity is actually an active and mutual partnership, and both of those terms can be a little bit fuzzy. So if you're ever not sure if that's the case, please reach out to us. Send us an email. I'm happy to chat with you about those terms and how to define them. And for a coalition, it's when the coalition itself forms, or if it's one that's perhaps it's been ongoing for a period of time and you have joined it, it's when you first become a member of it. Okay, now we're really going to get down into the nitty-gritty. And this set of slides, there are 5 slides here, one for each of the 5 modules that we're discussing. These are also part of that supplemental PDF that I mentioned that you were all emailed this morning. If you had been registered, if you registered last minute after that email went out, then you'll be able to find this on our website. Sorry, lots of talking, getting thirsty. Okay, so when you are thinking about what you need to report each quarter in PSC, first I want to note that a lot of these bullets repeat from quarter to quarter, so there's less information here than it looks like. But first quarter, the first thing to think about is any PSC efforts that are ongoing. As I've already mentioned, go ahead and copy those over from the prior year. Then any new sites that you have contacted and that have agreed to participate, those new activities as they're starting, go ahead and create entries. You will see that this bullet point repeats every quarter. Then you're going to check and see if there are any new updates. Make sure everything's accurate, add those updates. Again, these bullets are going to repeat every quarter. Finally, in the fourth quarter, you're going to complete supplemental surveys for organizational and committee level PSEs, and you're going to finalize everything and mark it complete. That is as complicated as it gets. Note that for PSE, every LHD should have at least one PSE entry, and you should have organization or community level PSE happening. These are part of your deliverables per the funding application package for all LHDs at all tiers. And that is part of our QA/QC checks as well. Okay, for DE, again, note that these bullets do repeat from quarter to quarter. So in the first quarter, you're going to create entries for DE that has started new. And if it's a single session or if it's a series that has finished during the quarter, go ahead and finalize and mark it complete. Quarter two, you're going to do the same thing. If it's a series that has continued, then you're going to update it. And really, that's all that's happening for DE. It's fairly straightforward. From quarter to quarter, if it's a new activity, create it. If it's an ongoing one, update it. And when it's done, finalize it and mark it complete. IE is very similar. Create new entries when indirect activities are started. Update them if they are ongoing. And when they are complete, finalize them and mark them complete. For partnerships, in the first quarter, copy ongoing partnership efforts over. Each quarter, create new entries if you have a new partnership. In quarter four, that's when it's important to complete that evaluation section. That's the section that asks you about accomplishments and lessons learned. It is not necessary to start that section earlier in the year. And in fact, I recommend that you don't start it before the fourth quarter. What happens oftentimes when folks start that earlier is that you're tempted to add in placeholder information. And then it ends up getting left behind at the end of the year. So at the fourth quarter, or even after you've marked it complete at the end of the year, what I will find when I'm checking the data in this module and in coalitions as well is that it'll say TBD or not applicable or NA or various other things, none in the accomplishments. And I will reach out to you and ask you, were there really no accomplishments for this partnership? And you'll say, oh my gosh, actually there were. I forgot to update that. So just skip that until the fourth quarter and update it then. This looks pretty much exactly like what you saw for partnerships. Copy them over from prior years in the first quarter, create new ones quarter by quarter as relevant, complete the evaluation section in the fourth quarter, finalize them and mark them complete. And that's it. That is what's involved with quarterly reporting. I do want to note for all of the places where I told you that you can copy entries for the first quarter, that if you haven't watched it and if you don't feel like you're quite the expert on copying pairs entries, that we have a video in the Mastering Pairs video series on YouTube about copying pairs entries. And Summer was going to be linking that in chat. I'm not sure if she did that yet. Yes, thank you. I had a note on an earlier slide that I skipped right past, so Summer beat me to the chat link. Thank you, Summer. And I'm gonna pass it back over to Summer to start us off talking about data quality.
Yes, thank you, Carolyn. Well, all right, gang, that was all we had for the reporting section. And I know that was a lot. So before we move along to the data quality processes part of our content, I want to encourage folks to take a beat. We'll take like a minute or so to type questions in chat if you have them. Do a little stretch if you need to, and let it soak in for a second. We're half-ish way there. I know there are still a couple lingering questions in chat. We're working on getting those answered. So thank you for your patience. Okay, so data quality processes. So for quarterly QA/QC meaning quality assurance and quality control, this is a process that occurs every quarter. This is a collaboration that happens between NPI and LHDs. Essentially, NPI goes ahead and reviews all of the pairs entries that have been completed during that period and flags potential errors in issue files. And pardon me, not during that period necessarily. We review all pairs entries and we flag the potential errors in the issue files. LHDs then go ahead and review issue files, resolving those issues, and then updating their status in the issue files. POs also have a role in this, and that role is to monitor and ensure LHDs are resolving issues in a timely manner. For year-end data cleaning, this is a process that occurs annually between about October 16th to 31st. This primarily is an NPI activity with LHD support. NPI goes ahead and reviews all pairs entries and then flags potential errors for correction. NPI goes ahead and takes action on potential errors, and this might be making an appropriate correction or contacting LHD pairs users to clarify information and determine necessary action, then going ahead and making the appropriate correction. In locating and navigating the issue file, each LHD can locate their QAQ issue file in their LHD evaluation OneDrive folder. You can access this folder via our OneDrive link. This will be provided in chat a little bit later. The path to locate the issue file specifically within your LHDs folder is to go through pairs and then FFY25 and then QA/QC. You will find it there as an Excel file. When you go ahead and look at the file itself, the issue file has a handful of tabs or sheets within it. You have an instruction tab, which will let you know the step-by-steps to facilitate QA/QC. There's a codebook tab, which will define all of the different terms used throughout the Excel sheet. So if you don't know what a site ID is, and that word is confusing for you, the codebook will define it for you. Then you have the module-specific tabs for PSE, DE, IE, partnerships and coalitions, and finally a summary tab, which will give you an at-a-glance look at all of the issues flagged in each quarter, in each module. Now, we'd like to take a minute and poll how comfortable folks are in accessing their LHD OneDrive folder. I know we have attendees with a mix of experiences today, so we want to see what your experience has been so far. So I'm going to go ahead and launch the next poll and let us know. I think we'll go ahead and end it now. All right. It seems like we have a range of experiences, which is totally understandable. I want to flag that if at any point you have issues accessing your LHD OneDrive folder, you can certainly reach out to our TA email, evaluatesnaped@ucanr.edu, and we can help support you. I will say that access to the LHD OneDrive folder is determined by project directors. They are able to let us know what staff should have access in a given year and remove folks when they leave, add folks when they come in. If you need access, go ahead and shoot us an email CCing your project director, and we'll make that adjustment as soon as possible.
Okay, so we're going to talk a little bit about step-by-step what to do once you get into that QA/QC issue file. So once you click on one of those module-specific worksheets, so let's say you've opened up, for example, the PSC worksheet to see the issues flagged for that module, and then you're going to repeat this for each of those different worksheets. The specific columns in each of those module worksheets will be a little bit different, And those are spelled out for you on that code book sheet in case you get confused about, what the differences are. And the differences there are because the information that we're flagging in each module is a little bit different because the modules are different. But you can always go back to that codebook worksheet for help if you need it. And of course, we're always here to answer questions if you need that as well. Review all of the flagged issues in each sheet. Hopefully there's not a lot, but sometimes there are, and that's okay. If there are a lot of issues, that's just an opportunity to clean up the data and perhaps learn a little bit along the way as well. When there are a lot of flagged issues, the column filters can really help you to kind of reduce what you're seeing so that what you're seeing, you can narrow down what you're looking at and maybe not quite be so overwhelmed. If you're a bigger LHD, this might be particularly helpful, especially if there are a lot of different pairs users from your LHD. Maybe you only want to look at the ones that were flagged for you personally. So, each different module will have a column for the pairs user. So that might be one way you would choose to reduce what you're seeing by using a filter. So once you've figured out what the issues are and what you need to do to fix them, go ahead into pairs and make the appropriate changes. If you aren't sure what needs to be done for a particular issue that's been flagged, then email us. We are happy to help. Of course, if there's, perhaps a question that you have that should be discussed within your team, then, that's also an option as well. You might want to talk to a supervisor or a team member to clarify the information. And maybe you need to do that and then reach out to us. So of course, those are all appropriate actions as well. And then once you have a decision, then you go back and you make the changes within pairs. Once you have done that, the change has been made in pairs. There is a column within the issue file that's called status. It is the very second, well, actually, it's the first column A, and then the second column is the quarter. And it is a checkbox. And you're going to select that checkbox to mark it resolved. Because you have gone into pairs, you have resolved the issue, you've fixed it, and that is letting us know that it has been fixed. It also lets your teammates know. And the next time you go back into it, you can even use that column filter to reduce it down so that you only have to look at things that are unresolved. So that's another way when you go back up to that number 2, so that you can reduce the data that you're seeing to only things that have not been fixed yet. Now, there are situations where perhaps you've looked at what we have flagged and you realize, actually, that's not an issue at all. That's just fine. We don't need to change anything. In that case, there's an option under this status menu to say reviewed, no changes, meaning we have reviewed this, no changes are needed. So go ahead and check that under that status checkbox instead of resolved. And then you're going to scroll to the right-hand side. And I'm sorry, we didn't want to take up a whole lot of space on the slides with this, but you're going to scroll to the right. And there's a column for LHD response. And you're just going to type briefly, we don't need a ton of detail here. Type in briefly what the reason is. There are lots of different potential reasons, but just put something in there so that we understand that there was a good reason that you didn't need to make a change. And then we can discontinue flagging that particular issue in the future. Please note what I have here in the red text. Do not give us any kind of instructions in this. For example, something that we have seen this field used for in the past is asking us to delete a pairs entry. We are not going into this issue file on a regular basis. Keep in mind that we have 61 issue files and there are 5 worksheets in each of them. So that's about 300 Am I doing the math right there? Probably not. Um, but in any case, it's a lot of places for us to be checking on a regular basis to see if someone's filled that in. We're looking at it quarterly, just as we ask you to. We're just looking to see if there's something that we should stop flagging. We're not looking to see if there's something that you need us to do. If there is something you do need us to do, please reach out to us directly. Send us an email. If you need us, for example, to delete a pairs entry, we can absolutely do that, but we need you to contact us and discuss. Finally, that summary tab is available. If it's helpful for you, it summarizes, for example, how many issues were flagged by module, how many of them that you have marked resolved, how many remain unresolved. The primary purpose that was created for is to help your project officer with monitoring, so that they can prompt you if things haven't been resolved, but it can absolutely be a tool for your use as well. Okay, so let's talk about what actually gets checked for. There are some common things that we look at across all of the modules, and then of course, because the different kinds of data reported in each module, they can be a little bit different. We're looking at different things for some of them specifically. Because generally speaking, most LHDs are doing all of the different kinds of activities. We are looking that every LHD has created at least one entry in each module. So if your LHD does not have an entry in a module, we will flag that. Now, it's certainly possible and appropriate that your LHD does not have that activity in a particular quarter. If that's the case, then you can ignore that. But we will put a message in your QA/QC issue file if there was not any entry. We are checking always if an activity reported within a module appears to be an appropriate fit. So if, for example, something is reported in the direct education or the program activities module that doesn't look like it's direct education, we will flag that. We're looking to see if something is a duplicate. Or sometimes folks create test entries. Maybe they attended a training and they were instructed to create a test entry as part of their training. That's not a problem at all. It's appropriate to create test entries. They just need to be deleted. So we will prompt you to do that. We are always on the lookout for the use of other menu options. That should be avoided whenever possible. There are circumstances when it is appropriate, but most of the time there is an appropriate menu option. So we will ask you to look for one, and we might help you with identifying what a better menu option might be. And those things we're looking for every quarter. In quarters 2 through 4, we will be looking at everything that has been checked in prior quarters, and that's across all of the modules. So keep that in mind as we go module by module, that everything is cumulative. And in quarter 4, in every module, we're checking that every entry has been marked complete. So now let's look at one more thing first. As I mentioned, we're checking that your LHD has created an entry in every module. So when your LHD has not reported any entries in one of the modules, the issue file will say, no entries found. Your LHD has no entries for this module as of the date of our export. This is considered to be a flagged issue, and it should be addressed. It can be addressed by saying that you've reviewed it and no changes are necessary, meaning that there really truly was no activity for this module. If that's the case, then that is what it is. The other time that you will see just a message versus issues flagged is when there actually are no issues flagged. That means that we have reviewed all of your LHD's entries. You did have entries, we reviewed them. We found no issues, so we will tell you that. No issues flagged. We reviewed your entries for this module and found no issues. This is great news. You did a great job. So that's what everyone is hoping to see. Okay, now we're going to get down to module by module specifics. And again, as a reminder, QAQC is cumulative. So what you see in Q1 applies to all of the later quarters. You don't see a Q4 here, but consider Q4 to include everything else you see on the slide. So in Q1, when we check PSC data, we're looking to ensure that the site information is correct, meaning that it is within your jurisdiction, it is an active site, and that the site itself matches the PSC level, meaning that if it is site level PSC, it is a site level site. If it is an organization level PSC, it is an organization level site. And that the site and the setting match. If it is Q2, we are also checking if it is appropriate that a Slack or an OAK has been completed. And for entries that have been marked complete, or if it otherwise appears to be applicable, we are looking for appropriate reach, youth involvement, and stage of implementation. And then starting in Q3, we're also looking to see that your LHD has at least one organization or community level PSC entry, and we're looking for the appropriate surveys for those. For direct education, it's fairly straightforward. This is not quarter specific. We're looking to make sure that there are no meetings or trainings entered as direct education. We are looking for correct site information. So for example, direct education should not be happening at a school district, and it should be within your jurisdiction. We're checking for appropriateness of the length of sessions. For example, a 5-hour session is unusual. A 20-hour session would be really quite out there for direct education. We're looking for normal session counts. We're looking that series are reported as one entry. A fairly common error that we're seeing is that folks will take a 5-class series, and instead of having that reported as one entry with 5 separate sessions, it's being reported as 5 separate program activity entries, and that is incorrect. And this is particularly critical when that series is part of IOE or adult DE evaluation. Okay, for indirect education again, everything is checked the same for all quarters. And again, one of the most important things is that it really is indirect education, and that the site is within the jurisdiction, and that the reach and the channel are appropriate. For partnerships, most things are checked the same, with the exception of Q4. So the jurisdiction level and the unit should be appropriate. The jurisdiction level is the area that the partnership impacts, which is almost always going to be local or tribal. The unit should always be your local health department. The site should be, again, within your jurisdiction, and it should be an approved SNAP-Ed delivery site. This is one that folks sometimes struggle with, and please reach out if you have questions about this one. And then in Q4, again, that's when I told you before, don't even necessarily bother with completing the evaluation information before Q4. But if you are, I won't be checking it until Q4. Coalitions, we're doing fairly similar checks, except that we have member level information for coalitions. So that information gets checked in quarters 1 through 3 as well. So jurisdiction level and unit are a little bit more complex for coalitions in that Again, jurisdiction level is the area the coalition impacts, and it is also usually local or tribal, but we do have some state level coalitions. And the unit is also usually the local health department, but we do have a few that are reported as wider areas. We have a couple, for example, that are reported as the San Francisco Bay Area. We do have some new CNAP reporting guidance, so we are now checking that that's being followed. We check that your coalition includes at least 2 members, with one caveat being if it's a CNAP and your LHD is not the CNAP lead, in which case you are only required to report yourself. Otherwise, we are checking that coalition members are reported appropriately. And finally, in Q4, we are checking the evaluation section as well as the coalition purpose field. Okay. One other note with that CNAP reporting guidance is that will be linked in chat. Those job aids, if you haven't seen them, are fairly new, maybe 2 months old at this point. And finally, we have gotten through most of today's content. We have a few more things to cover. But before we get to that, we want to have a chance for all of you to see if you can apply what you've learned and also help us understand where we may need to clarify or go over something perhaps in a different way. So let's just give that a try. We have 2 questions for you. We're going to do each of them and go over the correct answers one by one. Summer will launch the questions. And as a pointer, when they're launched, I recommend that you expand the pop-up windows so that you can really see the full text of the questions and answers because they're a little longer than standard poll questions. And if that doesn't help completely, you can also hover over them. The first one will ask you what steps you should take in a specific QA/QC scenario. And keep in mind that these were written with the broad range of LHDs in mind. So think more about what your whole LHD should do, more so than you and your individual staff member role. In terms of it being a fun new feature for us, like it's hard to even tell. Okay, for the first question, the correct answer, because some of these, like there's a correct answer, but they're not necessarily all, the other answers aren't necessarily wrong. There's a best answer, I guess I'll put it that way. So the best answer to best action, if you know how to resolve a flagged issue, is to go into pairs and update the entry. And 86% of you said that that's what you would do. So that's great. For the next one, if your LHD is unsure how to resolve a flagged issue, the most common answer was to contact MPI for TA, which is what we have marked as the best or most likely action to take. That was 62% of responses. The next most common response was to contact your project officer, which is not a bad response. I will point out the reason that that's not marked as the best or most likely action is because your project officer is not a subject matter expert in pairs reporting, and they will most likely connect you with MPI, which is not a bad thing. It's just going to take an extra step to get you the answer that you need. So we wouldn't discourage you from contacting your project officer. It's just probably not the best or most likely action. If anything, I'd probably suggest that you just copy them in on your email to MPI. Okay, if your LHD determines there is no resolution needed for a flagged issue, the most common response was to use the reviewed no changes status. That was 62% of responses, and that is great. The next most common response was that no action is needed. And that is mostly true. There's no action needed in terms of updating pairs. So kind of a trick question in that sense. So no action needed in pairs, but please do update the status in your issue file. And also let us know with that, the LHD, I'm blanking on what the actual name of the field is. But please let us know the reason for the reviewed no changes status so that we don't continue flagging it in future quarters. Okay. The question number D, your LHD's issue file says no entries found. The most common response was go into pairs, create entries. Sorry, I can't read the full thing. Go into pairs, create entries for LHD activities that quarter. And that was 64% of you said that. And that is what we indicated was the best or most likely response. So great job. Of course, there were a variety of small percentage responses, which potentially are all correct if you didn't actually have any activities that quarter. So all of you potentially get a check mark there as well. What should you do if your LHD's issue file says no issues flagged? Let's see. The most common response was no action needed. Absolutely correct. Actually, the best, most likely action to take there was not one of your choices, and that's to give yourself a pat on the back. Okay. Summer, if you want to go ahead and stop sharing that one, and we will talk about the next question. This one's a shorter, hopefully slightly more straightforward question, which is just to talk about the different status checkbox options. So there are really only 3 menu options there. One is resolved, one is reviewed, no changes, and one is blank. So what do these mean when you are in your issue file and you're marking them? Okay, are we closing it out?
Yes, folks should be able to see the correct answers now.
Okay. So the resolve checkbox means that an LHD has made a correction in pairs. Reviewed, no changes. As you can see, means that your LHD has determined no correction is needed. And blank means that nothing has been done. The LHD has not updated the status. It should also mean that the LHD has not made any corrections in pairs. But when we see it, it means we don't know. When MPI is looking at that issue file, it means we are uncertain what the status is. Okay.
So now I'd like to take a little bit of time to touch on the topic of data quality as it applies to other NPI supported evaluation projects. For assessment questionnaires, which include SLACs, OAK, and LAC, data quality checks are performed by NPI, including, is the site information complete? Is there a corresponding PSE entry for this questionnaire? Were multiple questionnaires submitted for this site using the same questionnaire? For example, 2 school SLAC submissions received for ABC Elementary School. And finally, was the questionnaire submitted appropriate for the PSE setting? For example, an ECE site submitted to an ECE SLAC. Usually, these issues are resolved via emails between a project director or other LHD staff. NPI staff will correct issues based on your instructions in Survey 123. For impact outcome evaluation, IOE, and adult DE evaluation, data quality checks include, was the survey taken at an appropriate day, week, or month? Are participant IDs duplicative or used incorrectly? Are custom links truncated? For example, is school, pairs ID, or time point missing. These data quality checks, or rather, the data quality checks for adult DE eval include: was the correct version of the survey used? Are correct or feasible program activity IDs used? And these are also typically resolved via email. NPI will notify you of any issues, and though you might not be able to actually fix them, this interaction will help improve future data collection, or so is our hope. Next, we want to go over a few resources to support your pairs reporting and data quality processes outside of what we've touched on today. So first and foremost, I want to call out that the issue file itself contains a few different pieces of support for you, which we covered earlier. Next, the CDSS pairs training will show you step-by-step how to enter data into pairs. We highly recommend this training for any of you who are new to pairs. NPI's Evaluation and Reporting 101 training was also developed for new staff, specifically staff new to CDPH CFHL. This training is very high level and ideal for staff who need a basic introduction to the components and requirements of pairs, assessment questionnaires like SLAC, income outcome evaluation, or adult direct education. The Mastering Pairs video series is a great resource for folks of all pairs experience levels. These videos are 2 to 5 minutes long and were developed to address data quality issues commonly flagged during the QA/QC process. We've shared individual videos throughout this training, but the link I've shared right now will take you to the entire playlist. The evaluation activity timeline is a handy Excel document that provides guidance on what evaluation activities should be happening when. These tabs, there are tabs at the bottom of this document representing each evaluation project. So SLAC, IOE, adult DE, pairs, that may or may not be part of your scope. The quarterly cross-project office hours take place in December, March, June, and September. This is a great time to come, meet the NPI team, and ask any questions. With that in mind, our next office hour is coming up and will be taking place on December 12th from 11 to 12. You can register through the link I shared in chat. The NPI Pairs listserv is a great tool to stay in the loop. We use the listserv to make timely announcements, communicate deadlines, and share releases. And finally, I want to flag once more our TA email address. You're welcome to email us at any time, and we will do our best to reply within 2 business days. That is all the content we have for you today. Thank you so much for joining us.
We really appreciate the time that you spent with us, and I hope you have a great afternoon.
Thank you.